Okay, so those are our goals for this lesson. Let's go ahead and look at our first little activity. Okay, this is utensils and paper preferences. So y'all read along while I read it out loud. It says several students are surveyed about whether they prefer writing with a pen or a pencil, and they are asked whether they prefer lined paper or unlined paper. Okay, so they went out to a large group of people. Kobe, so do you need to put that up in focus? They went out to a large group of people and they asked them all kinds of questions about whether they liked pens or pencils, wrote it down, lined paper, unlined paper, wrote it down, and these are just some of the results. Okay, not all of them are there. They surveyed 100 different students. Okay, circle that, underline it, that's important. So that's how many people they asked this question to. 40 said they prefer using pens more than pencils. 45 said they prefer using unlined paper more than lined paper. 10 students said they prefer lined paper and pens. And 45 students said they prefer pencil and lined paper. Huh? No. No, this is 40 students said they prefer pens more than pencils. And down here, it's out of those people that liked pens, they also liked lined paper. Yeah, same student. All right, so what y'all are gonna do is y'all are gonna take a second and I want you to use these bullet points and see if you can answer these 3 questions. Now, I will tell you that it may be a little confusing, but I'm going to teach you how to make it easier, okay? We gotta get through the hard stuff first. So I'm gonna give you about 3 minutes. I want you to try to not only find the correct answer, but know how you found it, and then we will share together. I would rather you try and get it wrong than not do anything for the whole 3 minutes. Ready, go. People at home, you can send your answers in the chat. Okay, so we know that there were 100 total people that were surveyed, and it doesn't tell us any of them that like pencils, but right here it says 40 students said they prefer using pens. So if we have that 100 people and we just took that 40 out of it, that like pens, then that's going to tell us this, that 60 of them prefer using pencils. Okay. All right, the next one, it says how many students prefer using pens and unlined paper. Okay, so this one was a little bit more tricky because it gave 2 different categories that we're working with, right? Okay, none of these just came straight out and told us how many liked pens and paper, so we had to kind of figure out which information was important and which information was not important, and that's kind of difficult to do because each one of them kind of mentions some of it and kind of doesn't mention other stuff. So let's look. Right here, earlier we said 40 students said they prefer using pens more than pencils. Okay, that's important because we're looking who prefers pens. So I want y'all to all in your head, I want you to think of 100 people. Okay, we all imagine 100 people. Okay, we're going to take out 40 of those people. Those are all the people that we interviewed that like pens. Okay, we can forget about the other 60. We're only focused in on the 40 people that said they like pens, right? Now, from that group of 40, we have to figure out the ones that like unlined paper. Okay, so down here, or right here, it says 45 students said they prefer using unlined paper more than lined paper. Okay, a lot of people took these 2 and added them together. Okay, but the reason we can't do that is because this doesn't tell us how many of those people like pens or pencils. Okay, so we have to go to the next one. 10 students said they prefer lined paper and pens. Okay, so this 10 is included in that 40, right? Because they like pens. All right, but is this the kind of paper that we want? No, so we need to take that 10 away from the 40 and we get 30 students that like it. All right, and then 15, or I'm just not even going into that right now, so we can keep moving on. Okay, so you can see that when you have a lot of categorical information, it's just bullet pointed out for us, it's kind of hard to try to organize that in our brains, right? Okay, because there's just a lot going on. So there has to be an easier way to organize it instead of just bullet pointing a list out. Okay, so what we're used to doing is having graphs and all that kind of stuff, line graphs, bar graphs, histograms, and that organizes numerical data. Okay, but what kind of data do we have? Say, what y'all say? Categorical, good. So write that down at the top. So what categorical data are we working with in this particular problem? Good. All right. So the way that you organize categorical data is by, and you're going to write this down here underneath your bullet points. You're going to have to write it small so it will fit. You make a two-way table. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to take this information and organize it into a nice little graph. All right, again, please write small so it all fits. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our first group of categories. Okay, what was our first group of categories? Ava, you said it. Pens and pencils. Okay, that's our first category. So again, write small. We're going to write pens. We're going to draw a line down. And then we're going to write pencils. All right, so I've created a one-way table. It's just going up and down, right? Okay. All right, now, that's not the only category we're working with. What is our other category that we are working with? Lined and unlined. So I'm going to go over here to the side and I'm going to write lined. And I'm going to draw a line. I'm going to write unlined. Draw another line. Okay, this is how you're going to see a lot of the tables in your book. They're just going to leave it like this. But I do want to encourage you to get in the habit of creating one extra column and one extra row, and that column and row being called total. Okay. So just create a total column and a total row. All right, so which category represents my columns? Columns. Up and down, so that's my pen and pencils. And which category represents my rows? The vertical, line, and unlined paper, right? Okay, so now that we have our graph, we are going to organize it with all of the information they gave us. So starting with first bullet point, the survey included 100 different students. Anytime they give you the total amount from the survey or observation or experiment or whatever it is, that total always goes into that box where both of the totals overlap. Okay, so 100 is going to go right there in that bottom corner. Every time, that's where the total will always go. Okay, next. It says 40 students said they prefer using pens more than pencils. Okay, so I'm going to go to pens. Did it tell us anything about lined or unlined paper in that bullet point? So we're not going to fill either one of those in. And how many people preferred pens? 40. So I'm going to put that down here in its total. Okay. Next, 45 students said they prefer using unlined paper more than lined paper. Okay. So I'm going to go to unlined paper. Did it tell me anything about whether they like pens or pencils? No. And how many total people were there? 45. So that's going to go over here in the total. All right, next, 10 students said they prefer lined paper and pens. Okay, so now they've given us both categories. Lined paper, pens, they overlap in this little square. So we have 10 people there. And then finally, we have 45 students said they prefer pencils and lined paper. So I'll go to pencils, I'll go to lined paper, and they intersect right here. So there were 45. All right, so earlier in the problem, and I said it too, this is only some of the results. Okay, we can clearly see it's not all of them because right here, I have gaps in my table, don't I? Okay, so we have to figure out how to fill in those gaps. So all we have to do is just some simple math, just like we were doing over here, but now we can see what information we need and what we don't need, right? Okay, so it really doesn't matter where you start, okay? We can start right here with the lined paper. If we have lined paper, we know 10 of those like pens and 45 of them like pencils. How many total people like lined paper? 55. We just did 10 plus 45, and that gives us 55. Okay, so then you can even double check your math for 55 for the totals, 55 plus 45. We were to add those up, does that equal 100? Yeah. All right, next, if I'm looking at unlined paper, oh, I can't really just answer this one just yet because I have 2 missing in this row, right? Okay, so let's look at it a different way. Let's go to its column. I know with pens, we have 40 people total. 10 of them like lined paper. So how many would this have to be? 30. Because 10 plus 30 is 40. Okay, now that I know this, can I answer this blank one now? If I know I have 45 total people that like unlined paper and 30 of them like pens, how many would have to like pencils? 15. And then you can look at this one either way. You can look at it as the total pencils, or you can look to see how many it would have to be to equal 100. But what would it have to be? 60. All right, so now that we have this two-way table, let's see if it's a little easier to answer those 3 questions that we started with. How many students prefer using pencils more than pens? Okay, I'm going to go to pencils. Did it say anything about lined or unlined? No. So how many total people like pencils? 60. How many students prefer using pens and unlined paper? I'm going to go to pens. I'm going to go to unlined paper. How many people is that? 30. How many students prefer using pencils and unlined paper? Pencils, unlined paper, how many is that? 15. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so like, will you be given a two-way table every time?
In most of these cases you will, but sometimes you will have to create them. And the only thing you have to do is just start with one category on the top and one category on the side.
So you want them to be able to do it? I don't understand.
That was what we did right there is why we need a two-way table. Yeah.
So you won't ever have to do that.
No, you won't ever have to do that without being able to create your own two-way table. Okay, so why is this table an effective method for solving this question? Why is this table helpful, basically? It helps you to, okay, it kind of organizes it, makes it a little easier to understand, and helps us find those gaps of information that we weren't told. Good. Anything else? Why is this one helpful? Ava? Yeah. It makes it clear what information we need and what information we don't need. And I'll admit, I could not answer these questions without the table. It is very hard for me to pick and choose what information is and is not important. And when it's organized in this table, I can see what information I need and what information I don't. Okay? Was using a table the only way to solve the question? No, it wasn't, because we didn't have the table at first, right? And some of y'all still found some of the answers. But just like we just said, this table does help us know that what information we definitely need and don't need. And finally, what does the word two in two-way table refer to? Ava? Two categories, okay? In this particular one, each category does have two sections in it, but sometimes your two-way table, it could be pens, pencils, and crayons. It could be line paper, unlined paper, graph paper. So you can have two columns, but it can have 3 or 4 or 5 sections, right? Okay, but it is the two is talking about the categories. All right, moving on. Let's do another one for another example. So turn the page. We're now looking at this one for fruit fly mutations. I think after y'all do this one, y'all are going to feel a lot more confident with these. Okay, and we will practice some more, so don't stress, I promise. That first one is the hardest one you'll do. Next, it says a scientist is trying to determine the role of specific genes by looking at traits of fruit flies. Okay, so we're all scientists, and we know how offspring works. Okay, some have certain traits when they're born, and some don't have certain traits. So we're looking and seeing how all of these fruit flies look based off of their two parents. Okay, the offspring of two fruit flies are examined to determine the color of their eyes and whether they have curled wings or standard wings. Okay, so what's the categorical data that we're looking at? The eyes and their wings. Okay, those are our categories that we're organizing. 80 offspring are randomly selected, and the results are recorded in this two-way table. Okay, so how many flies are we looking at in front of us? 80 total. All right, so I'm looking at this two-way table. Okay, they already have it organized for us. We have both of our categories set up. They already have the totals in there for us. What is it missing though? The totals, okay? And like I told you, a lot of the times the book is going to give you these two-way tables and they're not going to add those columns, but they're going to ask you questions about those. So I would just get in the habit of adding those on yourself. And it's just as simple as adding up the information in the table. So let's do that real quick. All right, how many total fruit flies were we looking at? 80. Okay, the total always goes down there in that bottom corner. Okay, so now we're looking at curled wings. Okay, so when I'm adding those up, I just follow its column down. So 17 had red eyes, 5 had white eyes. So how many total did we have? Do what? Oh, no, you're good. I didn't even hear what you said. All right, next, standard wings. 45 of them had red eyes, 13 of them had white eyes. How many total had standard wings? Okay, now let's look at our rows. We're seeing how many had red eyes. Okay, so all the ones with red eyes, 17 of them had curled wings, 45 of them had standard wings. How many total did we have? 62. All right, and then finally, white eyes. How many total had white eyes? 18. All right, double check. Do my totals add up? 62 plus 18, that's 80. 22 plus 58. All right, that's 80. Everything adds up. Okay, now I'm going to give y'all 2 minutes. I want y'all to answer these 3 questions, and then we will talk about them together. Ready, go. I have about 1 minute left. Give me a thumbs up if you're finished. Okay, I'll give you a little bit more time. I turned the heat off. Y'all get hot. Not toasty. Just bring pretzels.
No, I have like that too. I forgot my money.
All right, let's look at it. It says describe what the 17 in the table represents. Jamaris, what does the 17 represent? Say it again one more time. Good. The number of flies with red eyes and curled wings.
Wow, this is brown. Flies spelled S-O-Y.
It is, but the plural is IES.
Oh.
I spelled it with a Y yesterday because I just was writing too quickly. Like it's the fly's eye color. If you said like if it owns, no, it'd still be IES. Like Miss Frisbee, like no, Miss Frisbee flies to New York. Why not? Yeah. All right, next. How many selected fly offspring had white eyes? Ava? 18. All right, someone else tell me how Ava knew it was 18. Luke. 5 plus 13 equals 18. It didn't say anything about what kind of wings it had, so we ignore those two. We don't ignore them, but we add both of them together to get its total. All right, next, number 3. How many selected fly offspring had standard wings? How many had standard wings, Kobe? 58. All right, someone tell me how Kobe knew that it was 58. Ava. Oh, wait, I thought you had your hand up.
Right. I didn't get 58. I got 66.
Then you added up all the red eyes. So when it goes to standard wings, you just follow its column all the way down to its total. I think you did that, which would have been those red eyes. Okay? Yes, sir. Good. All right, so now that we've answered that, I'm going to zoom in. So the goal of this, once again, is just to be able to read and interpret two-way tables. So I'm going to ask y'all a few questions and hopefully everyone will be able to answer them now. These are not in your book. These are just questions I have. So y'all just look at your table. How or what does the 13 in the table represent? What does the 13 in the table represent, Jacob? Ones with standard wings and white eyes. Good. Next, how many selected fruit fly offspring have red eyes and standard wings? Lainey. 45. Good. How many selected fruit fly offspring are represented in the table? How many are represented in the table, Ava? 80. Finally, how many selected fruit fly offspring have curled wings? Have curled wings, Kai? 22. Awesome. Good job, guys. So now we're going to go to our lesson summary. And while you're going to your lesson summary, getting your highlighters and stuff, you also need your Chromebook. Okay? We're not doing 1.3, so go to lesson summary. Yes. You will need your Chromebooks and just open it and get to your Google Classroom. drop it off your desk.
Yeah, like, there's some items.
Here you come on. Here's that other about tomorrow. We got 3 girls. We wanna do that. There's no point in that. I mean, if they, like, they're not telling us when those measure things are, like, we find out for ourselves, and we're trying to make it work, but then, like, if they don't care enough to tell us, then I don't care. Yeah. So we're not going? Wait. Yeah. All right, next. Lesson summary. It says in statistics, a variable is a characteristic that can take on different values. We know that. We know a variable is something that can change. A categorical variable is a variable that takes on values which can be divided into groups or categories. Okay, so we looked at that. We looked at types of wings, colors of eyes, pen or pencil preference, lined or unlined paper, okay, all kinds of stuff. It says data from 2 categorical variables about a single subject can be organized using a 2-way table. All right, so here we have a 2-way table that shows the results from 170 responses to a survey asking people their age group and whether they have a cell phone or not. All right, what's the first thing y'all notice about this table? There's no total. So what would be your first step? To find all the totals, okay? Now, looking at the next little paragraph underneath it, it says the 38 in the table, what does the 38 in that table represent? 13 to 15-year-olds that have a cell phone. Good. Next, it says the 2-way table also shows it shows a 55. Do y'all see a 55 in the table? No. What is the 55? What would the 55 have to be about? It would have to be one of those totals. And it tells us that it's the people surveyed that do not have cell phones. Okay. So I would have to go to do not have cell phones, and that's all of these values added up. And that gives us that 55. Okay, so it says the categories for a single variable should not overlap. A person cannot be 10 to 12 years old and 13 to 15 years old at the same time. Obviously, we know that. Each individual is included in only one of the cells in the table rather than in multiple places. Okay, so that kind of goes back to that very first activity we did, and when Kai said, no, that adds up to way more than 100 people. Okay, but that was because the same people had different preferences. So like some people like pens and lined paper, and some people like pencils and unlined paper. Okay, so that's our lesson summary. Now, all of you should have your Chromebooks out on your desk. And you need to go to your Google Classroom. Oh, snap, I don't think I have it posted yet. Hold on 1 second. Okay, you're going to click on this I am Algebra 1, Unit 3, Lesson 1 cool down, and it should take you to Edgelastic. And it already has it should have one question for you to practice what we just did. If there's anyone that needs a paper copy of this, raise your hand and I'll bring you one, but you still need to put your answers on the Edgelastic. It's gonna be that's what the homework is. Sorry, couldn't think of words. Kobe, hold on 1 second. Yeah. You need to draw out the table in your book, you can. Says forest rangers record information about some of the deer in the forest they oversee. Use the two-way table to answer the questions about the deer they observed. What do y'all notice about this table? There's no totals. So what do you need to do? Make it have totals, okay? So it says how many of the observed deer younger than 1 year old have antlers, okay? So I'm going to go to the younger than 1 year old. They have antlers. How many is that? 0. How many of the observed deer are 1 year old or older? Did it ask us anything about its antlers or anything like that? No. So I'm going to go to 1 year old or older. It's not going to be these two individual values. What do I have to do with them? Add them together and I get 27. And then finally, how many different deer are included in this table? How do I find that? It would be all of the total deer. So I'd take all those numbers and I'd have to add them all together and I would get 50. Awesome. So now that we have done that, you can go to your Google Classroom and your homework for lesson 1 has been posted. It's right under that cool down. It's 2 questions, but 1 question has 4 parts to it. Okay. But go to it really quickly because I'm going to show you real quick how to do that second question. Okay. So that you can make it look nice and organized in the program or whatever.
So do we need to do the first question?
Yeah, you'll do the first question, but I'm just going to show you on this little sheet of paper so that you can see it. All right, so everyone at home pay attention to. So on question 2, this is technically would be like number 5 once you're on your homework because the first question has 4 parts. This is number 5. It's going to ask you to create your own table, okay? And it's going to be kind of like what we did on that first question. It's going to ask you to create a table, and then it's going to give you some bullet points for you to fill in, and then you have to fill in the other gaps, okay? So in order to create a table, there's a little button that looks like this, and it's in the part where you type, okay? It's going to tell you above it to click on that button, but you have to go to where you type to actually do it. You're going to click on the button that says table, and this big old like screen comes, not big O, a little screen pops up and it has a bunch of little squares in it. You're going to do a 4x4. Okay. And then it'll give you a little table that looks like this. And then you can type in the titles for it and it'll make more sense once you get there. But if you need any help with that, just let me know. But your 10-minute break starts now.
We'll go.
And then we will,
Move homework to the.
well, no.
Oh, man.